It wasn't just another Tuesday for Jimmy Kimmel. It was the day the laughter fell silent, the day his show's heartbeat stopped. Early that morning, the man who had stood beside him through every joke, every tear, and every standing ovation, his lifelong friend and bandleader, Cleto Escobedo III, was gone. For millions, Cleto was the face behind the saxophone, the groove behind every monologue. But for Jimmy, he was something far deeper. The brother he grew up with, the kid who used to crash bicycles into garbage cans and dream about music that could fill the sky. When the news broke, it didn't sound real. Not to the fans who'd watched them share the stage for over 2 decades, not to the crew who'd seen their friendship unfold like family, and certainly not to Jimmy Kimmel, who had built a career with Cleto's laughter echoing in the background. On Instagram, Kimmel's words were raw and trembling. "Early this morning, we lost a great friend, father, son, musician, and man. To say that we are heartbroken is an understatement." Behind those few lines were 40 years of memories, from Las Vegas streets to Hollywood lights. 2 boys who once played pranks in their neighborhood had grown into legends, side by side, until the music finally faded. But before the world knew them as the duo who brought joy to late-night television, they were just 2 kids chasing trouble and dreaming of something bigger. And that's where their story really begins. When Jimmy Kimmel finally broke his silence, it wasn't with a joke or a smile, it was with heartbreak. On November 11th, the world learned that Cleto Escobedo III, the soul behind Jimmy Kimmel Live's iconic band, had passed away at just 59. The announcement hit like a punch to the chest. Hours earlier, viewers had been wondering why the late-night show had suddenly postponed its November 6th taping, citing only a personal matter. Now that quiet mystery made sense. In a somber Instagram post, Jimmy poured out his grief. "Early this morning, we lost a great friend, father, son, musician, and man. To say that we are heartbroken is an understatement." It wasn't the words of a talk show host. It was the cry of a man who just lost his other half. Fans across the world flooded the comments section with disbelief. How could the man whose music opened every episode for over 2 decades be gone overnight? Hollywood insiders, fellow musicians, and comedians all echoed the same shock. The late-night stage that once buzzed with saxophones and laughter now felt eerily silent. For those who tuned in nightly, Cleto wasn't just background music, he was family. His laughter, his easy rhythm with Jimmy, his effortless way of turning monologues into melodies, it all felt irreplaceable. And yet, for all the tributes and headlines, very few people knew the real story. The decades-long bond that made this loss so personal, so devastating. Because before there was Jimmy Kimmel Live, before the bright lights and big names, there were 2 kids in Las Vegas, a comedian in the making and a music prodigy, whose friendship would one day change late-night TV forever. But few knew the story behind that friendship, or how far back it really went. Long before the cameras, the fame, and the late-night laughs, there were 2 mischievous boys tearing through a Las Vegas neighborhood in the late 1970s. Jimmy Kimmel had just moved there from New York with his family, barely 9 years old, when he met the kid across the street, Cleto Escobedo III. Within days, they were inseparable. Their friendship wasn't built on fancy toys or shared ambitions. It was built on chaos, laughter, and the kind of pranks only kids could get away with. Cleto was the one with the bike. Not just any bike, but a wild contraption with a sidecar bolted to its frame. Kimmel would hop in, thrilled, trusting his new friend completely. Then Cleto would grin, swerve off course, and crash them straight into a row of garbage cans. The 2 would burst out laughing even as Kimmel's mom shouted from the porch. And when they weren't wrecking sidecars, they were finding new ways to push boundaries. They'd sneak BB guns out to the lawn, trying to shoot kites out of the sky like it was some kind of neighborhood sport. Or they'd pile into Kimmel's mom's car, and while she drove, Cleto would quietly slide down in the back seat, slip out of his pants, and moon people from the window, sending both boys into uncontrollable laughter as they sped away. Those early days were filled with small-town mischief and endless loyalty. Every scraped knee and every ridiculous prank only brought them closer. They weren't just best friends. They were brothers in spirit, partners in trouble, bonded by the kind of laughter that never fades. No one guessed that years later, those same boys would share a late-night stage broadcast around the world. By the time most kids were still learning basic scales, Cleto Escobedo III was already a star in his hometown. Teachers called him a child prodigy. Classmates remembered entire school assemblies stopping just to hear him play. He'd raise that saxophone, close his eyes, and pour his soul into the music. And every time the crowd would rise to its feet. Even as a teenager, Cleto didn't just play notes. He told stories with sound. That talent carried him far. Before television ever came calling, Cleto was already living the musician's dream. He toured with Earth, Wind and Fire, backed Paula Abdul, and even landed his own record deal. He wasn't chasing fame. Fame seemed to find him. But even then, he stayed grounded, always coming back home to Vegas, to family, and to the same humility that made people love him. When Jimmy Kimmel got his big break, the green light for Jimmy Kimmel Live in 2003, there was never any question about who he wanted by his side. He needed someone who could set the tone every night, someone who knew him better than anyone else. To Jimmy, there was only one answer: Cleto. Still, television executives weren't immediately convinced, so Kimmel took the president of ABC to one of Cleto's live shows, and within minutes, the decision was made. Cleto wasn't just good. He was magnetic. The kind of presence that made every note feel like it was meant just for you. Kimmel later said, "Of course I wanted great musicians, but I wanted chemistry, and there's nobody in my life I have better chemistry with than him." And that chemistry turned into one of television's longest-running partnerships. When Jimmy Kimmel Live hit television screens in 2003, it wasn't just a late-night show. It was the beginning of a musical brotherhood that would define an era. At the heart of it stood Cleto and the Cletones, a band whose energy and soul set the rhythm for every night of laughter, interviews, and viral moments. From the very first episode, Cleto's saxophone became as recognizable as Jimmy's monologues. The two had turned childhood chaos into professional chemistry, and audiences felt that bond instantly. But what made Cleto's presence even more special was that he didn't perform alone. Right beside him on stage, every night, stood his father, Cleto Escobedo Sr. A father-son duo sharing a stage on national television wasn't just rare, it was deeply moving. Together they became symbols of family, heritage, and passion carried across generations. In 2022, nearly 2 decades into their run, Cleto posted a photo with his dad backstage, captioned simply, "19 years of this. Love you, Dad." It wasn't about fame. It was about gratitude, the kind that comes from doing what you love, surrounded by the people who raised you. Behind the scenes, everyone at Jimmy Kimmel Live had a Cleto story. Crew members described his warmth, his effortless humor, his humility even after performing with legends. Younger musicians often said he treated them like equals, never once letting ego overshadow the art. To them, Cleto wasn't just a band leader, he was a mentor, a steady hand, and a constant reminder that kindness could coexist with success. But behind every laugh, Cleto carried a quiet legacy that went far beyond late-night TV. Even outside the walls of Jimmy Kimmel Live, Cleto Escobedo's name carried weight and warmth. In the music industry, he was known as the soulful saxophonist who could turn any melody into emotion, the kind of performer who didn't just play music, but breathed life into it. On stage, he was fire and finesse all at once. Off stage, he was that rare blend of calm and charisma, the kind of person everyone wanted in their corner. Guests who performed on the show often mentioned him afterward, not just for his skill, but for his spirit. Whether it was a major pop star or an unknown act making their television debut, Cleto treated them all the same. His laughter before soundcheck, his quiet encouragement between songs, his subtle head nods during live performances, those little gestures left an impact long after the lights faded. Crew members said he had an energy that filled the studio, a pulse that lifted the whole room. Even during the longest tapings, he'd be the one keeping spirits high. cracking jokes between cues, reminding everyone that music and life were supposed to be joyful. But Cleto's story didn't begin in Hollywood. It began in Las Vegas, the city that shaped him, the place where his family roots ran deep. He was proud of that hometown, of the small stages that gave him his first spotlight, and the community that watched him rise. After his passing, Vegas locals and fans nationwide began sharing memories and old clips, videos of his performances, photos from the early days, and heartfelt stories about meeting him after shows. Social media filled with tribute montages, saxophone covers, and emotional posts tagged with his name, a digital symphony of love for a man who made music feel human. Yet for Jimmy, this wasn't just the loss of a bandmate. It was losing a piece of himself. For Jimmy Kimmel, Cleto's passing wasn't just news. It was the unraveling of a lifetime of memories. His tribute posts weren't polished statements or PR-crafted farewells. They were raw, heavy with emotion, written by a man who had just lost his childhood shadow. "To say that we are heartbroken is an understatement," Jimmy wrote. And in those few words, you could feel decades of laughter, mischief, and unspoken love. He reminisced about the countless mornings they shared, arriving early to the studio, trading jokes before the cameras rolled. For over 20 years, they saw each other more than anyone else. Their rhythm wasn't just musical, it was personal. Every show, every cue, every joke landed with a glance that said, "We've got this." In his post, Jimmy called working with Cleto a dream come true, and for anyone who'd watched them together, that dream was obvious. They weren't co-workers. They were brothers who had somehow managed to turn friendship into a career that touched millions. Kimmel's message ended with a line that felt like advice from someone who understood how fragile time really is. Cherish your friends. It wasn't just a plea. It was a lesson born from loss. The audience could sense it too. Comments flooded in from fans and fellow celebrities alike, many admitting they'd never realized just how deep that bond went. And though Kimmel didn't elaborate publicly, fans began quietly speculating whether the show's sudden postponement on November 6th, just days before Cleto's passing, had been linked to his declining health. It added a layer of quiet heartbreak, a realization that while the world was laughing at reruns, Kimmel's heart was already breaking behind the scenes. Still, the laughter and music they created will outlive them both. Some friendships are written in childhood and never fade, no matter how many years pass or how bright the lights get. Jimmy Kimmel and Cleto Escobedo's story wasn't just one of fame or success. It was a living reminder of what loyalty, laughter, and shared dreams can build. From those chaotic Las Vegas streets filled with laughter and sidecar crashes to the shining stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live, their bond stayed untouched by time. It wasn't built on money or fame or convenience. It was built on trust, mischief, and music. Cleto's legacy isn't just in the notes he played, but in the joy he spread, the kindness he carried, and the way he made everyone around him feel like part of the show. His saxophone may have fallen silent, but the echo of it still hums through every clip, every memory, and every person who ever smiled watching him play. For Jimmy, the stage will never sound quite the same again. But what they created together, that rare kind of magic between friends, will live far beyond the applause. Their story reminds us that the truest success isn't found in ratings or awards. It's found in the people we grow with, the laughter we share, and the memories that time can't erase. Because in the end, the most beautiful thing about life isn't what we achieve, it's who we achieve it with. And it makes you wonder, how many of us are lucky enough to grow old doing what we love, with the friend who started the dream beside us?